I remember the summer when the old house breathed with lilac and rain. It smiled with a tired, patient sort of welcome, the way a grandmother might acknowledge a child's first stumble and pretend not to notice the scuff on the floorboards. The river outside wore a veil of glassy light, and the porch swing creaked its slow invitation, as if the house itself longed to tell me a story and was only waiting for the right ear. We were small enough to believe a house could have memory, as if buildings kept their own diaries between plaster and timber. Our summer was not hurried. It moved in the cadence of cicadas and the slow turning of a fan that hummed like a distant spinner. And I, a child then, kept a little notebook in the drawer of the kitchen table, where we counted the days as if they were coins, and could somehow buy us the courage. The old house stood at the bend of the marsh path, where willows bent their head in quiet apology for all the secrets the water might keep. My sister, Lilac, and I would wander through rooms that smelled of rain and dust, of a sweetness that comes from careful neglect. A lace doily laid over a chair, a photograph turned just enough to blur the eyes of the woman it captured. We believed, with the fierce certainty of children, that the house remembered us better than our parents did. It listened. It catalogued our footsteps. It forgave our trespasses before we could form the words to confess them. There was a ritual we kept without ever naming it. In the kitchen, near the sink where the old pipes sighed like a patient with a secret, we would pour a small bowl of milk and set it on the sill to feed the day, as Mama said, though she spoke with the soft laughter of someone who believed miracles could be learned in the margins of a day. We set the bowls in a neat line along the edge, and we spoke names, our own names, and the names of those who could never return the favour of forgiveness, until the light shifted and the air grew thick with a kind of prayerfulness that felt almost sacramental. And then came the night of the storm, the night of the gate between the rooms opening on its own, the night Mira vanished. The boys across the marsh spoke in hushed voices of a figure seen near the boathouse. A child with hair the colour of wet wheat, who disappeared when the rain began to hammer at the windows like a chorus of small unknown hands. I was 8, too young to understand why the river could swallow a body as easily as a leaf. I only knew that a thing I had not yet learned to fear, in its own way, felt very near. Mira was my friend, brave in the way that children are, brave, bold enough to pretend the house had lungs and to plead with it to breathe in their direction, so they might borrow some of that breath to haunt their own futures. By morning, the storm had spent its fury, leaving the house sparkling with rain and the world quiet, as if relieved that the tale could go on without interruption. The door to the attic, which had always looked as if it kept a secret shut behind it, stood ajar. We thought nothing of it. The attic had always looked like a mouth that might whisper a truth if given a moment's chance. So we climbed with the careful mischief that belongs to the curious, and found a room we had not known existed, a tiny space behind a loose panel in the library, as if the house itself had decided to reveal a private corner only when the storm had softened some of its memory. The room held a single trunk, its lid carved with vines that curled around old initials, the wood dark with rain that had learned how to pierce everything, but stubbornly refused to let go of its secret. Inside the trunk lay a bundle of items that smelled of thunder and old perfume. A faded photograph of a girl who looked astonishingly like Mira. A thin strand of hair still bound with a ribbon. A diary with a cover that cracked when touched. And a letter in Mira's handwriting, addressed to no one and everyone at once. We did not read the diary aloud, not in that moment. We did not speak of it as though it could turn the night into a confession, or the confession into a thundercloud that would swallow us whole. But we learned its language, the way a seed learns a garden, by growing toward the light of a thing you were forbidden to touch. The diary described a game we had played, a name we whispered in the attic's shadow, the way Mira's eyes had widened at a phrase we did not yet understand, but would learn in time to fear. The letter, when we did finally read it many years later, whispered the truth more plainly than the diary could have done in its more lyrical fog. I am here because you forgot to tell the truth when you should have told it. We spoke of it to no one, but the house heard. It learned our fear and pressed it into the walls until the house began to breathe in a way that sounded almost like crying after a long day of being held upright by someone else's insistence that you remain strong. The attic's door would sometimes swing without wind, not with a sudden gust, but with a patient, deliberate opening that suggested the house itself wished to show us its memory, a memory that did not belong to us, yet could not exist without us. Mira did not reappear in any ordinary sense, but she did in a way that felt more precise than appearance. In the years that followed, the house would sometimes show her, not as a girl with laughter in her eyes, but as a presence that shared the house's breath with us. I would hear a light tap on the chimney near the late hours, and, when I rose to see what movement might answer the sound, I would find nothing there but the faintest echo of a voice, soft, almost uncertain, saying my name, as if I were someone else's memory, being spoken aloud by a mouth that remembered me as a child, but did not know my grown, creased face. Time, of course, has a way of wearing away the sharpness of the world's unnatural things, until what remains is a soft residue, an impression printed on the mind's glass. When I left the marsh and the old house, I carried with me only a handful of photographs and the sense that the place could endure without me, yet never forget me. And now, in the quiet of old age, I have returned to the house with fingers too stiff to do much, but tremble over the surface of a table and listen for the sound of a past that refuses to be quiet. The house welcomed me with the same lilac-scented breath, only now the lilac smelled of rain that has learned to stay. The rooms carried the weight of years, as if stacked on one another in careful order, each layer hiding the one beneath it, the way stories hide inside a grandmother's shawl. In the study, I found the same desk on which we had drawn maps of a future we did not yet understand, lists of names with marks